Yeah, we are getting to a point where United States governments are going to have to acknowledge the reality that extraterrestrials are visiting this planet, and that they're not sure what they're up to. That's coming. It's going to happen. And you got to have some sympathy for the people out there who this is going to broadside a lot of people, especially the debunkers. You know, a lot of these people have made a living basically trying to debunk UFO stories, reports, abduction cases their whole lives. Now, look at Joe Nichols. You know, there's a lot of people out there. Mick West, Michael Shermer from Skeptical Inquirer. A lot of people out there are, you know, their world right now is turning upside down. And you have to sympathize with them because, you know, at one point, I remember, UFO believers were on the other side of the spectrum with regard to this because, you know, it was ridiculed and there was a stigma and all that stuff. And those guys got to sit back and basically do no research and just, you know, throw out some proclamations and what they believe and that it's not true and blah, blah, blah. And the government said this, so we believe the government. But now that's all turning on the top of its head. And I can understand why they might not believe in it. I mean, let's face it, if I didn't have the experiences I had, if you don't see it with your own eyes, right, it could be hard for you to accept it, right? Some people out there have not seen these things and do believe it. Like, look at Stanton Friedman. Like, you know, that was a guy, the late Stanton Friedman, who was a nuclear physicist who started investigating UFOs in the 60s, and that turned out to be his career. He was fascinated by it, and he believed that all of the data suggested that this planet is most certainly being visited by extraterrestrials. So there are people out there that, you know, don't have to see it to believe it. A lot of people, not just Stanton Friedman or other research, you know, and a lot of other researchers haven't seen it, but they've seen enough evidence that they're convinced. But for people like me, I was somebody who had an experience when I was a kid with some sort of entity in my bedroom in the middle of the night. I didn't understand it. You know, at the time I thought it was, you know, I thought it was a devil or the demon. You know, I didn't know what it was. I remember going to see, and sometime after that, I guess it was 1978, my dad took me to the movies to see Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I think the movie was released in 77, but it didn't show up in the local theater till almost a year later, probably in 1978. And I really wanted to go see this movie. At the time, I didn't believe it was true. I just thought this was I didn't believe at that time that there were the possibility that aliens were actually visiting the planet. I just thought this was a Hollywood creation, you know. But I didn't, you know, now looking back at it, it's like, yeah, I see what Spielberg did. He based the beings on what people had seen up to, you know, like Betty and Barney Hill. And, you know, obviously those beings were very similar to what some people who were abducted had reported. But that movie at the same time was more of a fanciful. You know, they made the beings look friendly and benign. I don't know if I believe that. I don't think we could say that, you know, yet or ever. But the other part of that movie was in Close Encounters was that the main character played by Richard Dreyfuss, Roy Neary. You know, after he sees a UFO in the beginning of the movie, he becomes obsessed and he wants answers. And I think that happens to a lot of people. Like I am one of those people that when I had my experience, especially after the incident when I was a kid and in the late 80s, you know, when I started realizing that was probably an alien in the room, because after seeing alien abduction things, documentaries and on TV, I started, it occurred to me that, that's what that was. Cause I knew there was something there. I always thought it was a devil or something, or a demon, something, religious related. But it wasn't until years later, well over 10 years later, till I realized that no, it had to be something else. I mean, there was this humming sound, that electronic sound, a humming sound that never stopped during the whole time. The thing, whatever it was, only had 3 fingers on its hand. Okay, Everybody said, "Oh, you're just dreaming." No, I knew it wasn't a dream at that time, and I knew it wasn't a dream. I still know it wasn't a dream all these years later. But then in 1994, when I was on that fishing trip with a buddy in near Hazleton, Pennsylvania, and we saw a UFO in the middle of the night come right up to us, floating there right in the sky with 3 giant lights on it and with no sound whatsoever, and it was only 2.5 stories off the ground right in front of us, and it was moving in ways that defy explanation, moving in ways that our aircraft can't move. From that point on, it's like, yeah, something's definitely going on here. There's no question now. I've seen it with my own eyes, and you want more answers. So that gets me back to the debunkers. They've spent their whole lives, their entire lives, looking at this and just not believing it because, obviously they've never seen anything. Obviously, if they did, they wouldn't be talking like that. Because when you see it, then it just changes you. You know it, and it's like, it's real. It takes some time, but the reality of it sinks in eventually, and you just know. So these guys obviously never saw it. They don't want to believe it. It sounds too funny to them, too fantastic, too out of this world. I mean, literally. And now, and all these years, like throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s, into the 2000s. The government never acknowledged this. No, there's nothing to it. No, we don't know what you're talking about. Remember that UFO that was seen over O'Hare Airport in Chicago? That was covered up quick. Nobody ever talks about that. People were told not to talk about it. But yet there was a lot of people that saw it. A giant flying saucer hovering over the airport back in the 2000. I don't know what it was. I think it was sometime between 2000 and 2010. I don't have the information in front of me right now. But there was something there, right? People saw it, but the government didn't acknowledge it. The FAA didn't want to acknowledge it. It had hush, 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 hush. Now that's changing. So that means the world of the skeptic is turning upside down, and now they're going to be on the other side. Now they're going to be the ones who are going to look ridiculous when they, what's going to happen when the acknowledgement finally comes, the acknowledgement that this is extraterrestrial. How are they going to act then? Are they going to accept it with grace and honor? It's going to be tough for some of them. I just can't see them, like I spent a lot of my life saying the government's lying, telling people they must be hiding something, right? The government, meanwhile, saying, "Oh, we got nothing to hide. Nothing happened at Roswell. Nothing to see there. It was just a weather balloon, and the bodies they saw were crash test dummies, And this was great for if you're a skeptic, if you're someone who makes a living as a UFO debunker. Oh my God, when you have the United States government on your side, you can't lose. Now all of a sudden that table's turning, that world is turning upside down, and those people are going to be on the other side. And they're going to understand what people like me felt like when you hear them. They're going to how are they going to respond? Like what will their reaction be? Imagine a debunker standing on stage trying to talk to a crowd after it's been acknowledged that it's extraterrestrial by from official stats. What's they going to say? Well, the government must be lying. Yeah, that's what it is. They're making it up just to scare people for some reason. They'll get booed off the stage. But I don't know. It's going to be a sorry thing to see, I think. So some of them might take it gracefully. I don't know. Some of them might say, well, I admit I was wrong. I admit, I was wrong. And obviously there's something going on. Obviously. But they've contorted, like numerous times throughout the years, I've seen some of these guys contort themselves into pretzels trying to debunk these things, without really doing any research. Quite frankly, the real people that usually the people that do the research, the interviewing people, the studying the landscape, sometimes there's where these things landed, they'll find charred grass, and the soil is devoid of any sort of life wherever these things land. Those people did actual ufologists actually do research. The UFO debunkers usually do not. It's usually from what I've seen throughout the years. My experience with them is that it's all proclamation. I remember reading Back in the late 90s, I believe it might have been Michael Shermer, that Skeptical Inquirer guy, took a ride to Roswell and he found nothing. He didn't really look. He didn't really interview anybody. Didn't do anything. It was basically he went there with a certain mindset and walked away with a certain mindset without doing anything. He went there, but he didn't do anything. I can't remember what magazine it was in. It might have been Popular Mechanics back in '97. But you would see stuff like that, like in the mainstream, throughout all those years, and it would just, twist your stomach. It's like, man, this guy didn't even do any research, and we're going to buy his reasoning where you have all these other people interviewed over 100 people, and they have a book. So, and there was no fair play when it came to this subject. So again, in a way, I sympathize with them because their world is going to turn upside down here shortly. And I believe, especially when you consider this UAPX group coming out with 600 hours worth of FLIR video, and plus analysis, they're looking at it right now. They're going to have all kinds of reports and documentation to try to that will help. Go to show that these things cannot be human. These things cannot be objects that are manufactured by human beings. Again, some of these objects move so quick, so fast that a human being would be crushed inside them. As far as our physics knows, I mean, obviously these beings figured out other ways, other things. They have something else figured out where they don't get killed. I mean, how could you go 50,000 miles an hour across the sky without becoming a grease spot on the back of the plane or back of whatever you're flying in? But these things are able to do it, obviously. There's been a lot of reports of these like incredible speeds turning on a dime, extreme right angle turns in the sky. I mean, we don't have stuff that can do that. I mean, if we do have anything that can do it now, there is a possibility. And a lot of people believe that some of these TR-3B, these triangular craft, are actually something that the United States government has been working on for a long time, and that it was based on recovered alien technology, and these things could move very fast, and who knows? We could have something that's close to it, but again, I don't believe there's any chance that we understand completely. If we do have anything that's recovered, I don't see how, if something's 100,000 years more advanced than any of the technology that we have, because obviously it would have to be, right? It's going to have to be thousands, tens of thousands years more advanced than anything we got, right? How long? I mean, you could take us. You could have 10 lifetimes, 10 generations could go by, and we still wouldn't be able to figure it out. But I digress here. I want to go back to what I was talking about with the debunkers. Their world's turning upside down, and it's going to be a sad day for them coming soon, apparently.